Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back again. So we are discussing here the topic on if enterprise architecture is really required for product development. And I'm going to take again the topic for this time, and then we'll take it forward. Some of the points which I've just brought up here is that first one, you really don't need a jack to lift a bicycle. You need one to lift a car. So in the IT industry, and especially in the product development, there are so many areas, there are so much kind of work which we actually have where really enterprise architecture necessity isn't there. A lot of us have actually seen in the organization, we are forming something called as architecture forum, enterprise architecture group. But the investment, the cost which is going in setting up that group, having such highly skilled people, is it really paying off? Many scenarios it is seen that even after having such highly strong enterprise architecture group, forum, who are basically doing this enterprise architecture work before product development is started, still the flaws, the testing issues, the bugs are actually realized later. And that is definitely one aspect. And second part is that enterprise architecture, which we are talking about, is it really even needed for a lot of the IT projects which we are doing in product development area? So because here again I will have to take a little bit of thin line that I really cannot say I 100% disagree that enterprise architecture is not required, because if I was saying that, I would be completely contradicting myself, because that's not really the fact. However, enterprise architecture is not a must. That is definitely the point for all product development. Coming to point number 2, if you see, maintaining an enterprise architecture group, this can be really cost consuming. Many times it may not really add values to the business services, and what we really expect from them may not get delivered. Second, lot of product development work which we do, it really doesn't even need enterprise architecture work, because many times it is very, very customer centric, that particular segment, department specific, product specific, which is absolutely having no interdependency with the enterprise applications which we are talking about. Because in an organization, the IT services which are getting offered, there are certain IT services which are enterprise-wide services. There are certain IT services which are very, very customer-specific services, or which are very, very specific to the service which we want to offer. In such scenarios, they may not even have a relevance of doing any kind of enterprise architecture. So with this, basically what I mean to say here is that let us keep the simple things simple. Let's not overcomplicate them by increasing the cost on developing the blueprint, architecture, checking from whether it is going to impact really from the enterprise-wide structure, because these things, really the simple ones, are really not going to be, will not really turn out to be cost effective if you are going to add this additional cost of enterprise architecture, because it's going to hamper us from, again, 3 aspects: time, cost, and scope perspective. So the first argument which I would like to bring up, and then we'll hand it over to Mohit for his summarization, and then for the next argument. So the first one basically is that building a doghouse does not need enterprise architecture. Though I'm not using an IT example here, but here it says this can be built by one person, requires minimal modeling, simple process, simple tools. So this is what we need to basically consider, that there are certain things in product industry which really doesn't need great amount of enterprise architecting to really do all those aspects. So I move it to you, Mohit. You can start with your summary.
Thanks, Vijay, for bringing in some important points wherein we can have a good discussion. But there is one request: please use IT-specific examples. It's not like that this example is irrelevant, but just a thought that it would make more meaning if we relate it to IT, because building a doghouse and developing a product is a different aspect. So, just a request: if you can, it would be good. It would be easier for us to relate to our IT industry.
Sure. And the next argument which I have is around the similar ground. So what I suggest is probably you could counter the arguments from the next argument, because it's actually in conjunction with the first one.
Okay.
And I actually probably had to, if you want, I can conjunction with
why not?
argument.
Why not complete
so
your
that
thought?
then it becomes much easier for
Yes,
you.
yes. Why not?
Sorry, I should have correlated immediately with this.
Yes, yes, yes.
So
Please.
this is what example which I gave you, and then if I move to the, this is where I was saying that there are a lot of activities in IT industry where basically enterprise architecture is not required. Like if you take, for example, a lot of enhancement work which we are doing in application space, because that's where the more product development kind of work comes into. Infrastructure management, it's not really product development, but it's more of from the either there is a change in infrastructure or a complete set of infrastructure. And but specifically coming from the product point of view, we have seen a lot of activities which we get in product development area, like automation of certain programs. Certain programs are being done in certain manner, but then these automation of programs, many times we basically see these requirements that they want some additional fields to be added so that these fields can be changed, or certain extra data could be loaded into certain products. Important again, this is the third one which I'm talking about, is customer experience management, which is now a new buzzword which is going on. And especially a lot of organizations are having dedicated into it, where more of the way things are really, it's still the same application, but how the customer uses this application, the look and feel, like the Android OS which we are talking about. Why people are going in? Because it's really giving a different experience management. So changing the look and feel, such kind of activities, or many times in the product development space, we really have to do activities keeping in mind application tuning, where we really have to see how the applications are performing and how we could tune the application, the product from that perspective. So in these particular areas, if we really are trying to push, like as in my similar example, there are certain parts in the IT organization which really have no correlation with the enterprise-wide impact, and making it mandatory, a kind of requirement that you must do an enterprise architecture kind of work for your product development, because they would still certainly do the required things like regression testing, system testing, unit testing, which will actually do a lot of amount of these kind of activity. But again, stressing on separately for enterprise architecture, I don't think is a requirement. Over to you.
Thanks, Vijay. Vijay pointed out a very important thing as the first line of his agenda. He said, you don't need a jack to lift a bicycle, but you need a one to lift a car. You know, that is the point where the exact problem lies. Most of us in the IT industry think that developing a product, it's like lifting a bicycle. True, agree. But the scenario can be, a bicycle can be inside, stuck in a well with some woods around it. And for that, you might not be requiring a jack, but you would be requiring a pulley to pull up a bicycle. So that is what my point of discussion is when I'm saying that enterprise architecture is really important to understand that the product which you are going to develop, what impact this product is going to make in the industry standards and to the organization's benefit. Enterprise architecture applies to managing the change in processes and internally focused systems, but is also useful in helping a company to make decisions about the mix of products that they present for sale to their customers. This is very little discussion of this possibility or how EA could fit with other processes for product development. One would assume from the silence that EA is not applicable to assisting with necessary planning for products and services. Enterprise architecture, ladies and gentlemen, includes the business architecture. Enterprise architects must consider all the elements of business architecture, and if they do their job right, they work engineer things correct, changes to the company to align the priorities and behaviors of the company and resources to vision, strategy, and success. Definitely the product which you would come up will enhance the overall importance and productivity of your organization. Let's have a look at this enterprise architecture domain. People normally have a very, vicious thinking about enterprise architecture, that this is something in which even if I have to, in case I have to develop a small product, I'll have to look each and every aspect of the enterprise altogether before developing that. Before making that assumption, let's go through the overall architecture when we, or what we should be visualizing when we talk about enterprise architecture. It talks about business architecture, application architecture, information, technical architecture, majorly divided into two domains, infrastructure and telecom. Then focusing upon business strategy, governance, organization, processes, their whole infrastructure, computing, middleware, storage, business analytics, data quality. And then solution architecture, which talks about business architects, application, information, infrastructure and telecom architects. These are the domains which are being watched through and looked through before a decision is made for developing a product. Developing a product doesn't mean that you are writing a 10-15 lines of script to produce a small software. I, as an organization, is developing a product with an agenda to come up with a solution which increases and enhances my business utility into the market. And that is what my point is. Today, if I develop a product of which it doesn't actually utilizes or realizes the intention or the overall vision or strategy of my organization, how can I make sure that that product which I am going to develop is mature enough to realize its importance itself in the market? Moreover, it can be in one way be beneficial, but it would be contradicting with overall utility and warranty of the product, as IDL says about. Overall utility and warranty of the product is always at a stake if I don't have the exact vision of what it is going to be. When deciding that what products are we going to measure or what products are we going to capture, it is very important to check the impact of a product both from the infrastructure perspective, application perspective. When I go on the infrastructure perspective, the impact on the data centers, the end user computing, application infrastructure. When I go to the application side, I need to check my business intelligence, I need to check my ERP solutions, I need to check my business solutions to ensure that the product which I am developing is in coherence with the different integral laws which are laid behind that. So it is very important to analyze and understand that yes, a product which I am going to develop should be in such a way that I have seen the overall picture of the organization and this product which I am going to develop is into the strategy of the vision of my organization. Your organization is visioning to develop a product which would be helpful in doing the governance, risk and compliance assessment. And you are developing a product which is actually doing the assessment of the different processes which are there in the organization. How it's going to help you? That product may be good, but what if a product is good as well, staying in the market and realizing the overall importance of the vision of the organization? So that's what my point is. Up to you, Vijay.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Mohit. And just to quickly add on to his point, not really controversing everything, but one point which I'm saying here is that we need to understand the level where enterprise architecture should penetrate within an organization. And this is where the important chunk is. If we basically see the kind of the product development work, which as a service providers in India, with the experience which I have with the working in the product development companies, is that out of the 100% product development which we get, on an average, and this I don't have a substantial slide to show, but based on the experience and after speaking to many ops managers, I've understood is that 30% is what we get in the new, complete brand new product development area. And 70% is actually over the same existing development, which we call this, what is called as enhancements, where this is basically the same product. It has already been reviewed from the enterprise architecture perspective, where they have considered the business strategy, but thereafter, they really are not having any further impact on an enterprise-wide organization. So this 70% chunk which I'm talking about, again, you really don't need to, and in fact, that is what is happening. It doesn't really goes back to the enterprise architecture group for any further suggestions or any kind of review on saying that this again needs to get reviewed. And that's a huge chunk of what we are talking about, which actually happens, and that's where I was giving you these examples about. Coming to the next argument which I have about here is, as I was mentioning, enterprise architecture this increases drastically from scope perspective, cost perspective, and time also. As Mohit was talking on the other slide, you would